Welcome, everybody, to the Fall 2022 Gathering for Gardener auction preview. We have an auction coming up on eBay for charity from October 23rd to the 30th. Lots of fabulous items, puzzles, books, talks, magic, demonstrations, you name it, anything Martin Gardner related, we have it. And this will help us with in a number of ways. We obviously, struggle as everyone else did with the pandemic. This will fund scholarships. As you know, we have our monthly celebration of mind talks. We always have those professionally edited and put up on YouTube. So this will help fund that and help fund other gardener outreach initiatives. So today I'm going to be previewing a number of items that we have in the auction. I'm your host, Bob Hearn. I'm a Gardner board member and the program chair. Why don't we kick things off by starting with Doris Schatzschneider, who's going to describe to us the items that she has in the auction. If you are ready to begin, Doris.
Sure. I want to showcase 3 items for the G4G auction. And the first 2 items are kits for building beautiful polyhedral sculptures. Each kit is in its original box with instructions, and each contains 60 identical molded white styrene plastic pieces with mathematically precise beveled edges for ease of assembly. These were designed by Robert Whorf, founder of Symmetrics, and the kits were sold about 20 years ago and are no longer available. The completed model of the compound of 5 tetrahedra has diameter 7.1 inches, and the completed model of the great stellated dodecahedron is 11.8 inches. The third item I want to focus on is this beautiful double-sided inlaid wooden checkerboard complete with checkers. It was designed and fabricated by Kevin Lee and is shown at was shown at the joint meetings of mathematics in 2014. One side is inspired by Escher's print Development 1 with outer squares metamorphosing to lizards at the center. 72 pieces of wood, maple, walnut, and cherry make up this design. And the other side has another species of lizards at the outer edge that metamorphose inward to the center as squares, and 72 pieces of maple, walnut, and red oak make up this design. And Kevin Lee made a video that shows how much work went into producing an earlier, simpler version of the game board. Here he is designing the lizards and using his own computer program called Tesselmania. That's it. Thanks very much.
I'm tempted to go put in a bid there. That's very cool. So before we move on to our next speaker, let me just highlight a few more items that we have. We have a large number of Martin Gardner books signed by Martin Gardner. After the Dessert, Mathematical Diversions from Scientific American, many of the Scientific American anthologies, Wheels of Life and Other Mathematical Amusements. I see over a dozen titles here, and the list I have says just to name a few. We have autographed books by Donald Knuth, including highlight would be The Art of Computer Programming, Volume 4B, Combinatorial Algorithms Part 2, which is to be published this fall. Surreal Numbers. This is a fabulous little book that introduces John Conway's Surreal Numbers, selected papers on fun and games, and a few other books autographed by Don Knuth. So that's really wonderful. Let me move on to our next introduction. We have a recorded video from Rachel Quinlan.
I'm Rachel Quinlan, and it's really nice to be here and to be a part of this wonderful G4G community and a part of this fantastic auction. So I'm a mathematician, and I also like to do a little bit of geometric origami. I like to fold paper. And so today I'd like to just share with you 3 pieces of my origami work, which are framed. First one, they're framed on a 36 centimeter square between 2 sheets of perspex, and they're mounted in this white mounting, so that the width of the entire piece is 36 centimeters, and the width of the aperture is 28 centimeters. So what I like to do with origami is fold that tessellation with other geometric patterns, including the wallpaper patterns. And the best way to display these pieces of artwork, which is the reason why they're framed between 2 pieces of perspex, is to have them lit from behind. So really, I like to put them up on a sunlit window, and that way, because of the patterns of light shining through the different layers of paper, you can really see the pattern a lot more clearly because of the contrast between places where there's only 1 layer of paper and where there are multiple layers of paper. So this is one of my
Okay.
She's gone mute. Don't know if you can tell, Bob.
wall. It doesn't have any reflections, but it has rotational symmetries. So the way that I mount these on the, for I'm displaying them myself, for example, in my office, is that I attach them to a sunlit window using 4 of these kind of double-sided suction cups, which attach quite effectively to the window, and that way you can sort of see the pattern clearly when the sun shines through. So if anyone's interested in these works, I would include 4 of these little suction cups along with the framed piece of work. So that's the first one. This one represents the wallpaper group P4. Another one, which is a close relative of that one, and one of my interests is in kind of adapting origami designs in a small way so that we can move from one wallpaper group to another one. So this one is a kind of version of a very similar design to the other one. It represents the wallpaper group P4M, which is the equivalent to a tiling of some plane with squares. And so this arrangement has the full symmetry of a pattern of square tiles. And as you can see, there are kind of 9 of those tiles there, each of them like a sort of flower with 4 or 8 petals, depending on how you look at it. So this one's kind of a paler greenish, yellowish green color. And again, it looks at its best probably when you when it's lit from behind like this. But if not behind, you can still have a look at the folds and appreciate the pieces that are involved probably more clearly. So that's the second one. Same size as the first one, is sort of mounted and framed in the same way. The third one, which I have available for the G4G auction, is a slightly different one. It's not a tessellation this time. This one is I call it a pink hexagon. So it's a bright pink paper, and it's just a hexagonal design with a single hexagon, but sort of an intricate pattern of hexagons on the inside. So again, it doesn't quite fit into the wallpaper group patterns, but it is another example of a piece of geometric origami. So if you're interested, I'd be delighted, and I'd be very happy to send you one of these pieces from Ireland Thank you very much and good luck.
Okay. Well, that was very nice. I'm sorry about the audio glitch. Hopefully it got restored there in the middle. Let me highlight something else here. We've got, just a sec, share my screen again. Many of you are familiar with Vihart's fabulous YouTube videos. We've got a collection of the actual notebooks that she used to illustrate and draw in when she was giving those talks. So that's going to be something I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to bid on. And let's move on now to, who do we have up next? Yes, we have a video from Robert Becker talking about hypertiles.
Good day, G4G enthusiasts. My name is Bob Becker, and I wanted to introduce you to this wonderful item, which I call a hypertile. Some of you might recognize it as a hyperbolic paraboloid, bordered by, 4 edges of a tetrahedron. 30 years ago, I came up with an idea for making a construction toy based on this. And it actually all goes back to my college days when I happened to have this man, Erwin Hauer, as an art professor. He taught a course in 3D design, and he showed us these sculptures he was making, these beautifully curvy sculptures that were all made of repeating units, and the units were usually hyperbolic surfaces, aka saddle structures. And later on, I was playing with my daughter, this is years later, with little plastic pieces, something called Polydron, and they snap together. And there are triangles and squares, and you could make cubes and octahedron out of them. But I all of a sudden thought, whoa, what if those surfaces, what if those tiles were something hyperbolic? Could you then perhaps snap them together to make shapes like Erwin Hauer had developed? And well, again, that was 30 years ago I had that idea, but it had to wait till 3D printing and my retirement to actually realize that dream. So here it is. Comes in a handy little box here. Kind of looks like Pringles, only they're square and they're colorful, and I wouldn't eat them. And the connectors on the end. So the connectors, I'll show you what they look like. I'll hold that up to the camera there, maybe. That came from a student I had one of my last years teaching. I was trying to figure out how to connect them. And she says, what about Lego hands? So you can think about the little Lego characters' hands that would grasp onto that. Okay? And they do just that. They grasp onto the side here, and then you can connect them, and it could be a hinge, and all kinds of things are possible. This is kind of the quintessential hypertile shape, which I love. I call it an exploded tetrahedron. I think you probably see why. A tetrahedron whose triangles have been exploded outward, but still all connected. And this continues. This is just part of an ongoing series. Here's one made in black and white that goes on to the next stage, but it's got wonderful little images as you rotate it around. Here's a fun one I call the spiky pickle. Kind of looks like a barber shop sign there. Okay. You can also connect them not edge to edge, but more kind of corner to corner, and obtain shapes like this. If you recognize this, it's the actual structure of diamond, the carbon atoms arrangement in the crystal of diamond. And this one, by the way, if you hold it up in the light, gives some amazing shadow projections. You could probably kind of see some of the different possibilities as I angle it around like that. But really impressive in terms of shadows and stuff. Pretty much anything's possible. More importantly, unlike Legos that I know they come with 60 to 70 page instructions, and you end up with something looking like Battlestar Galactica or something like that. Here it does come with not really instructions, but more of a kind of a page to get you going, and there is no right answer. So anyway, hyper tiles. I hope you're interested in them. I've donated 5 of these sets to the auction, and if you're interested, age groups, I think really anyone from 6 and older. Younger than that, 3, 4, 5, fine motor skills becomes maybe an issue, but seriously, 6 and up, had lots of success with it. I've done workshops and really 6 up to 106 in terms of the ages. So if you're interested, bid on hyper tiles.
Thank you to Robert Becker for that. We do have the main auction going on eBay for charity from the 23rd to the 30th. But during this period, we have a few sites that are also going to be offering 15% discount going to benefit G4G. And that's Kadon Enterprises, Kate Jones' company that makes these fabulous pentomino puzzles and related acrylic and wood puzzles. We have SB Crafts, and we have Two Brass Monkeys that makes precision engineered brass puzzles. And these are all listed on our auction site. And just to make sure, I'm going to share that auction site in our chat window. And are you ready to go, E.T.?
I am ready. Can you hear
All right.
me?
Yes, take it away.
So the inner dimensions of these prints is 10 by 7.5. The outer dimension, the inner dimension is 14 times 11. Excuse me, inner 10 by 7.5, outer 14 by 11 with matting, and they're professionally wrapped and printed and ready for framing. So the first one I'm going to talk about is in my background. It's a painting I did called Cuneiform E, and I've always been fascinated by secret codes and systems of notation and various writing systems. Living and dead. Somebody, probably the Sumerians around 3000 BC, invented writing. Since they lived in a marshy area, they had a lot of reeds, and they used them to make wedge-shaped impressions in clay tablets, and this led them to create the first alphabet. It's called cuneiform and developed into several variations. When I learned about it in high school, they talked about cuneiform A and cuneiform B and possibly C, and I think that terminology is now moot. I got to wondering what the first writing system would look like if they had no hard objects to press into the clay and could only make streaks and then dots with their fingers. I called my creation cuneiform E because I didn't want to infringe on anybody else's copyright name. But I was also thinking about what writing would look like in some exotic alien world inhabited by intelligent creatures. I wanted to make it as unearth-like as possible, but still be recognized as writing. So that's what I was thinking about in that painting. And my next painting is called Spooky Action at a Distance. Modern physics predicts an effect called quantum entanglement. Basically, this means that the properties of particles that were created together remain entangled, even when they're far apart. This seems to violate causality, the speed of light, and other common sense notions. In particular, Einstein considered such behavior impossible, and in 1935 he referred to it as spooky action at a distance, spukhafte Fernwirkung. Many experiments have been done since then, and they all seem to confirm that the principle of quantum entanglement is valid. But the skeptics point out that all of these results have subtle loopholes. Finally, in 2015, a confirming experiment was done that seemed to be loophole-free, or was it? There is work being done to create very fast quantum computers based on the entanglement principle. Will it work? Who knows? The vast majority of physicists accept quantum physics, including its spooky action part. But the famous physicist Richard Feynman famously said, nobody understands quantum physics. Study the painting and see if you can spot the spooky action taking place. So that was what I was after in that one. A lot of my paintings are inspired by physics or mathematics, not necessarily all of these today. The third painting is called Catalonia. It just happens to be where I am right now. Barcelona, the main city is a hotbed of art with beautiful architecture and wonderful food, and was the home of Miro and Gaudi, architecture of the amazing Sagrada Familia Church. I tried to capture the flowing lines of the Sagrada Familia, the whimsical and colorful shapes of a typical Miro, and the bright and bustling mood of this wonderful city on the Mediterranean Sea. Miro in particular has had a huge influence on me. I'm trying to get you to see more of it. Some people have accused me of copying Miro's style, and perhaps I have. But who creates anything totally original? We all copy things that were created by our predecessors in a conversation that started 3,000 years ago when the Sumerians, or was it the Hittites, invented the first writing system. Okay, the next painting is called The Doors of Perception. This is based on the title of a book by Aldous Huxley. He really started something when he wrote this book in 1984. It described his experience with mescaline, and it's one of the themes that inspired the psychedelic revolution in the 60s. I lived in San Francisco in those days and saw the whole hippie thing from beginning to end. I never used psychedelic drugs myself, although some of my friends did. They all told me that I didn't need to take drugs because I was naturally stoned, whatever that means. In any case, I've always liked psychedelic imagery, and this is my interpretation of Huxley's infamous book. Another thing that inspires me is travel, and in fact, I'm in Spain right at the moment. I just like to browse the world, and my next painting is called Hedronetta Days. It's something that inspired me as an artist is the quality of light in the Greek islands. The British author and poet Lawrence Durrell once described the light of Greece as akin to the brightness in the eyes of the beloved when falling in love. This rather outrageous bit of hyperbole exactly captures my own feeling. This painting is inspired in particular by the Hedronetta bar on the island of Hydra in Greece. By the way, all the things I've just been talking about, I have links in the chat. So if you want to look into, say, the island of Hydra or anything else I've mentioned, some of it's in the chat. I hope everybody has at least one spot on the earth that is truly magical for him. For me, it's this rather touristy island near Athens. More than once, I have sat on the deck of the Hedronetta bar and watched the beauty of the sunset and wept. Admittedly, I probably had a couple of glasses of ouzo, but still, if I could pick the place where I would like to be when I die, I think it would be sitting on the patio of this beautiful island of this bar on this beautiful island in Greece. And I've tried to capture some of the light and the mood of the sea and the blue, and it's just my impression of that place. My last two paintings are called String Theory 1 and String Theory 2, I believe. This is String Theory 1 and this is String Theory 2. And again, inspired by physics. String theory is a theoretical framework in which point-light particles of physics are replaced by one-dimensional strings. The strings vibrate and interact in complicated ways and produce something like the traditional standard model of subatomic physics, or so the string theorists hope. The trouble is that even though string theory is mathematically beautiful, it has stimulated a number of developments in pure mathematics, for instance. It has so far been impossible to come up with an experiment that would show that the theory really does describe the universe or anything else. Also, there are many versions of the theory, again, with no way to show which one is the best candidate for describing reality. In their continuing struggle, the physicists have now come up with a generalization of string theory called M theory. Yes, I have a painting with that title too, in which the strings are replaced by wobbly membranes. I suppose they will eventually generalize that to wobbling solids or hypersolids, replacing the strings and membranes. I showed my painting one time to a real physicist, and he said, "Yeah, that could be string theory." I don't know if he was kidding, but I've made at least 5 works based on it. And sometimes when I have to use art speak to in a show and put something on the wall, I have this little quote that I've come up with, which I wrote. Deep down is this seething mass of fundamental particles. It churns and twirls and pops and crackles, and it underlies everything. It is everything. We are the foam on this percolating ocean. We are spindrift. It is the reality. It accepts nothing and means everything. No one sees it, but it is before us always. And people are wowed. So that's all I have to say about my paintings. Hope you like them. Bye-bye.
Thank you, E.T. I can tell I'm going to have to be bidding on some of those myself. I'm a huge fan of Moreau, and Hydra is my favorite Greek island. I did want to comment your piece, Quantum Entanglement. It's worth mentioning that the Nobel Prize in Physics was just awarded for this work, confirming the Bell inequalities, that quantum entanglement is the way the world actually works. This, should have won the Nobel years ago, but I think probably, they can only award it to at most 3 people. They have to wait until enough people die to when there's only 3 left who are important. So that's a sad reality. E.T., I did want to mention.
I know about that, and I think in some people's mind, the jury is still out on that, but it's pretty much nailed down.
Yeah, it's a done deal. Let's move on to Chesco Real, if you are ready.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. So little introduction about myself. I'm a mathematics lecturer at the Swiss University EHL, and I'm a collaborator of the Swiss Museum of Games. I'm a popularizer of mathematics, games, and languages. And in these 3 domains, I created several exhibitions, I give talks, I publish papers, and I organize festivals, including I've been co-organizer of the Italian Festival of Mathematical Games. And I speak over 10 languages, including Esperanto, that, as you may know, is one of the most mathematical language. And I'm representative at the United Nations of the World Association of Esperanto. You can find more about myself on my YouTube channel. And now I'm going to present what I offer. I will offer 2 separate talks that will be most probably online, unless you are not too far from Switzerland. And for each talk, you will be able to choose the theme. I have some themes that I like very much, but I think that for this audience are something like too trivial, like, for example, arts in fractals, or the spatial 4th dimension, or paradoxes, and more. So in case you have a specific interest, you can tell me. But I'm going to focus now on 2 themes that are probably more peculiar here in this for this audience, and that are, as I said, languages and mathematics. So languages and games. Sorry. So the first one is about languages. One of the talks that are requested to me most often is relationship between languages and mathematics. And so I do a panorama about several languages in which we can see some connections with mathematics. One of the concepts that I explain, for example, is the phonematic bijectivity. In your case, of course, you know what bijectivity means, but maybe you don't know details about phonetics. And so I will explain why the bijectivity is also very important in linguistics, specifically in phonetics, between, for example, sounds and letters, just to simplify for now. And then I show also something about Esperanto, why it is a mathematical language, why it's very regular. And I talk also about some things in Chinese and in German, like syntax in German, that is like push and pop in computer science. Douglas Hofstadter also talks about that in his book. And I talk also about formal systems, and I talk about also Loglan. Logical language is another invented language that is quite similar to, let's say, computer science programming languages, and that, by the way, distinguishes between language and meta-language, pronouncing the quotations marks, for example. So this is just a wrap-up or summary about my talk about languages and mathematics. And then the other thing that I want to highlight is mathematics and games. So concerning games, I use and I have invented many games connected to mathematics. One of them is the 4D tic-tac-toe. So it's a tic-tac-toe played on the ball game that you can see here. So there are three cubes, 3 times 3 times 3. Another one is a fractal tic-tac-toe that is played online on Cantor set. And well, I will not go into detail now, just for you to know that it's a game in which you can play in a fractal. Another one is Ritmomachia, that is a sort of chess with numbers that was invented in the 11th century, and in which the aim of the game is to create arithmetic, geometric, or harmonic sequences with your pieces. And then 3 more games. One is Eleusis, you might know it, is a game by Robert Abbott that was described, by the way, by Martin Gardner in '77, I think, in Scientific American. And it's a game in which the aim of the game is to guess the rule, the secret rule of the game. So one player plays God, invents a game. It's played with cards, with normal cards. And then the other people are in teams and they have cards, and each card is like a science experiment. And so they test, and the God says if yes or no, it fits the rule. The rule might be, for example, alternating red and black, for example, or might be also something much more complicated. And finally, the last 2 games are 2 games from by Lewis Carroll. One is the arithmetical croquet. The quite simple game, actually, based on a croquet with numbers. And the other one is the game of logic that Carroll invented as a one-person game to solve syllogisms in a graphical way. And I modified also as a game for 2 persons. So just to summarize, I offer talks, probably online talks, then depending on where you are. I'm based in Switzerland. And the talk that I think might be most interesting for you are one about mathematics and languages, and another one about mathematics and games. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cesco. All
Thanks.
sorts of interesting subjects to discuss there. I hope we can get you out to Gathering for Gardner in person sometime to share some of that with us in person. Moving on, Barney, are you ready to talk about your juggling offerings?
Oh, I certainly can. Here I was expecting to follow Rod, but I can do that. Might just give a shout out here to Rod as a former member of the Fairfax Jugglers, and he ran away from us and became a professional juggler. He insisted on touring the world with the Flying Karamazov brothers as Pavel instead of staying with us on Thursday nights and juggling. So shame on you. Anyway, he then also went on and did his path puzzles, which you're going to hear about in a little bit. So that's pretty cool that he's gone on to real success. In any event, talking about juggling, we're talking about something that's obviously very old for thousands of years. And going back to Claude Shannon, who invented information theory and an awful lot of communication theory. He also was a juggler and a unicyclist. And he also invented a formula that would describe how the balls move and sit in the hand when you're juggling. And that's a juggling equation, which is pretty complicated, but it's neat that it works. And then there's also numerical ways of describing juggling, and that's called site swap. And that's been developed by a number of people over the years. And finally, I want to give a shout out to another Fairfax juggler named Jim McCormick, who has used group theory in order to analyze the states of various juggling patterns, and then to inscribe them on the vertices of dodecahedron, and then using the Hamiltonian paths of the dodecahedron to describe how you move from one state in the juggling pattern to another. So very good, Jim McCormick, on that one there. So where are we here? Well, I'm talking about how I'm going to show you how to juggle. And so I'm going to move back a little bit so you can see the balls, and I'll tilt this down a little bit. And let's see, I'm going to trust that you can see me now. So we're going to start out with a juggling ball. And obviously we'll start with one because it's easier than starting with 15. So we'll start with one. And I'll have you get comfortable with throwing it and catching it and talk about how to catch it. And then we'll go on in the lesson. And we'll go on into two balls like this. And obviously, if you could do two balls in the one hand, which I'm trying to do here, you're juggling because you have more balls than hands, just for the two balls in the one hand. Well, what most people think of as juggling, of course, involves a little bit more than that. So you might be talking about three balls. And most people think of this kind of thing as, which is a three-ball cascade, as real juggling. That uses three balls and two hands, so it definitely is juggling. And it's a basic pattern. It's very much like neutral in a car. In other words, you can go from various places to different states. And so from the three-ball cascade, you can go off and do a lot of different tricks. Obviously, in neutral in a car, you can go to drive or reverse or things like that. So what I'm showing you here is a basic three-ball juggling pattern called the cascade, and this is what I'm going to be teaching. If you are in the DC area, I'll meet you in person, and we'll get together for an hour and work on it and get you up to speed on this. If you're not in the DC area and it's a hike to get wherever you are, then we'll do this by video chat. And the last time we did an auction, a little over a year ago, I did a video chat with somebody from Hong Kong, and that was kind of neat too. So the thing is available, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barney. Well, juggling is, of course, a very canonical activity for anyone who is into recreational mathematics, and someone is going to be lucky recipient of some nice lessons there.
Actually, I have two items on the block. One is a workshop that I teach on puzzle making, and we go through a bunch of different types of puzzles, how to create your own puzzles, how to make your versions of already established puzzle types, couple of mechanical puzzles, some more conceptual kind of things. So that's one thing I'm offering. But the main thing I want to talk to you now is about this book, Path Puzzles, which has a whole bunch of, I think about 170 or so puzzles of this type that I came up with and have developed. You may have seen path puzzle-like things elsewhere. Other people have come up with them also independently, but I think I've developed it to a point that it kind of makes it more enjoyable. So basically, it's each path puzzle is a kind of represents a little map of a little room. Maybe it's like full of all kinds of hazards that you can't, and traps and pitfalls and things that you're not supposed to walk on as you try to get from one edge, like in this one, it's right here, and to the other edge. There's openings, at least two openings per puzzle. And so you're trying to find a path that winds its way through that grid. And the numbers on the edge indicate how many of the cells in that row or column have the path in it. So for example, this 3 up here is the tally of this 1, 2, 3 cells in this column that have the path through it. And that's basically all you get. You can't use a cell more than once. The path can't cross itself. There might be a couple other details I'm forgetting, but okay. So I just wanted to bring folks through like solving a super basic path puzzle. I was going to choose this one here, and so a process you might go through to solve this is first, you know that you have to use this cell and you have to use this cell to get in and out. Next bit of reasoning you might use is to consider, okay, what is the other cell that fulfills this 2 along here? So if you go here, you also have to go out to this cell and you have to go up to this cell. And that overfills this row because there's only a 2 here and you'd have 3 going along here. So you can't go here. So to fill up the 2, you have to go here. Also, to fill up this 2, you have to go here and here. And from there, it's just a matter of getting into and out of each of the cells that you've indicated that you have to go to. And that's going to lead pretty easily to that path. And that was pretty easy. But again, that is only the second puzzle in the book. After a while, I think starting with section or level 3, I introduced false doors. So what's going on here is that there appear to be more doors at the edges of the grids than 2, but only 2 of them are actually going to work. The others, you can try using the wrong door in a solution and you just won't come up with a solution. And there's, one thing I was going to mention up here, there's one thing that makes this puzzle book a bit unique is that there's a whole section of tips in the back, and occasionally a puzzle will have a little thing that looks kind of like this next to it that will indicate that there's a tip that is kind of tailor-made for this puzzle and other puzzles like it in the back of the book, that because it uses some particular solving principle or something like that. And the tips have a lot of different things about them. Some of them are kind of topological. Some of them are use algebra to help you solve the puzzles. Like here's one where you could use algebra. The numbers along the top have to add up to the same total as the numbers down the side. So you could use that to solve for the missing clue here, because this 2, 4, 3, 1, I think that totals 10. Here you have 1, 2, and 3. That only totals 6. So you know there's a 4 down here. Yeah, what an awesome 4. And then after a while, I introduce what I call super clues, which is clues that are the tally from more than one row or column. So they're somewhat embedded to some degree in the grid. This 5, for example, tallies up everything above it, to its left, to its right, and below it. And so it's just a matter of figuring out what are those numbers actually indicating, how many of the cells that are filled up are on each side of that number. And last element I introduce right toward the back are encrypted clues. So these puzzles are just like the other puzzles in their general concept, but every number is mapped to a letter in a one-to-one encryption scheme. And this is just a little table that you can use to record what you learn about what can't be true and what must be true about the encryption. So let's see, what else have I got here? Oh yeah, so this is the tips section, and it's just got a bunch of different principles laid out for helping you solve. yeah, and I think we're arranging for the books to be signed to whomever bids on them. And I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. I do want to highlight one more item or set of items in the auction. We have a large number of editions of journals and magazines donated by Stan Isaacs. We've got, if most of you, many of you who are older anyway, will remember Omni magazine. We've got a collection from 1979 to 94. We've got many years of games magazines, Quantum magazine, and a few other magazines, all donated by Stan. So thank you, Stan. And finally, we have Perpetual Calendar Pentomino Puzzle by Wenxiao Cao. And I do have a video to describe that. Now, it is in Chinese, but I think you can get the idea anyway. So I've decided I'm going to share that. So here we go.
Hello， 大家好。今天跟大家介绍的是5个骨牌万年历，主要我们会依照创意发想、绘图设计、产品制作、游戏应用以及发展愿景去对它做审定。5个骨牌名牌游戏的规则依据翻面还有动作的限制和使用形块的数量不同，12个5格骨牌两面玩是今天讨论重点哦。5格骨牌都是由5个正方形结合而成，总共只有12块，以12个英文字母 FILNPTUVWXYZ 命名哦。那日本 Tenyo 公司有多种拼图玩具，绿色是10×6紧密相连的，还有蓝色的是8×8的环状排列的。环状的玩法总共只有65组解答。万年历的编排设计总共有64格，就是8×8，那里面有12个月，每个月都共2格，还有31天，还有7周日，还有2个空格。那这2个空格分别放上万年历以及我的名字。我会用一下电脑程式来重新解答。那这本身是个8×8的方格拼盘，那我们只要在下面填写白色的4个空白键。那如果你今天不想要点到这个键的话，只要再返回就可以了。那当你点完4个方块之后，我只要下拉选单，点选到 Run to Next Solution， 接下来只要按 Run， 就会得到解答喽。好，这1组、2组、3组、4组，这是我在俄罗斯社团分享5个骨牌以及万年历，然后俄罗斯人也证明了万年历及12年历都有解答哦。进阶12年历版本比较困难，现在问题来了，以今年10月3日星期日为例，以常规使用 FILNZ 5块骨牌，还有 PTUVWXYZ 7块，不会拼牌的时候怎么办呢？开这网页，标题是 Polyphone Puzzle Solver， 然后按 Download 就可以咯。下载开启 Polysolver， 点选 File， 按 Download， 在 Polyphone 资料夹内找寻 Scroll 资料夹，资料夹是按照英文字母排序的哦。打开之后，我按 Print， 然后我们就可以按照刚刚的步骤把它拼上去。再来第2个，按我把它旋转，移动放上来。再来是 L， 把它放上来。再是 N。把它放上来，再来是 Z， 最后我们把4个方块放出来，之后按 Stop， 当然这里的10肉，然后会跑出这个Show Solution， 然后就发现这里有2组解答，这是第1种以及第2种。这组解答我们可以观察一下，绿色框框这一组的对称图形是可以合并翻面的哦。那橘色框框这一组互为全等图形，是可以两相互对调的哦。Flow 画面会出现无解的状况，那就得更换牌面上任意一块，就能让电脑试试看喽。接下来是动画展示，如何操作万年历能够显示今日日期。把 CD 盒平放在桌面上，打开盒盖，移开透明胶片。把全部形块翻覆在盒盖上，我们把I形块旋转移动，把 L 形块旋转移动， 弯形块翻面移动，把 W 形块旋转移动，把 UX 形块合并旋转移动，把 Z 形块旋转移动。把 N 形块翻面移动，把 P 形块旋转移动，把 F 形块平行移动，把 TV 形块合并翻转移动。这时候10月8日星期五就会出现哦。从10月8日星期五的解答中，我们会发现 TV 以及 NE 对称的形块组合都是可以合并翻面的哦。接下来是收纳过程，以下是收纳的动作，把 B 形块旋转移动，把 NE 对称形块组合并平行移动到合开上。把 T 形块旋转移动，把 F 形块翻面移动，把 P 形块旋转移动，把 N 形块旋转移动，把 Z 形块旋转移动，把正方形4格骨牌移动。这个收纳的奖只有移动右下角。
Okay. So hopefully that was clear that is essentially a new pentomino puzzle every single day when you try to solve for today's date. I do see someone has their hand up. Doug McKenna. You have a question, Doug?
No, I just was able to plug in, so I didn't hear the earlier part. But I do have a print in the auction. I don't know whether you talked about it or not. So I thought I might.
No, please tell us.
Oh, okay. So I've offered up a print that I've done in the last year that is pretty striking and beautiful. And it's based on a better golden rectangle that I've been studying for many years and have written a paper about. And well, it's a recursive subdivision of a special rectangle into 1.59 million copies of itself in various colors, orientations, and sizes. So it's basically a tiling with a fractal structure that is brought out by my choices of coloring. And it's just really kind of cool. There's a lot of it's all algorithmic and based on a recursive subdivision of the geometry of this particular triangle, which is, rectangle, which is based on the golden ratio, but it's not the golden rectangle.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I believe that is it for our auction preview. I shared the link again in the chat, and hope to see you all on eBay for Charity. It's definitely some things that I'm going to be bidding on. I'll leave the session up just for a couple more minutes if anybody wants to copy anything out of the chat. So thank you to all of our panelists, speakers for sharing the details of their work. And thank you to all the other contributors for our auction. And thank you all for attending. Bye-bye.